Hey everyone, welcome to the Ironman Cairns 2024 highlights, the 8th race of the Ironman Pro Series, the Asia Pacific Championships, which meant there was a $150,000 prize purse for the men and women, as well as 4 slots for the Ironman World Championships. Of course, there was those 5,000 Pro Series points on offer here, which a lot of these men were eyeing. For a few of them, it was make or break. They needed to get their Pro Series campaign going, and the two that many were watching were Joe Skipper and Braden Curry on the men's side. Now, it was the perfect day for them to have a cracking race. Still waters out at Palm Cove, a large crowd, and just perfect temperature for them to jump in to their wetsuit swim, which is unique to this race for the warm water, which a lot of them were wondering how that was going to affect them, whether it would make them overheat in the swim. But it didn't seem to affect the speed because it was a fast swim right from the gun, and not too surprising there with Andrew Horsford Turner and Josh Amberger leading the way. Andrew Horsford Turner said it was relatively comfortable for him. Him and Josh worked together, taking turns. Braden Curry and Gregory Barnaby were also there too. Now they managed to get quite a gap on the chase pack, which was a pretty large one coming out of the water. They had about 4 minutes plus, and Andrew Horsford Turner and Josh Amberger managed to get a little bit of a gap on Braden Curry and Gregory Barnaby starting the bike. They managed to hold on to it for a little bit as well. However, Braden and Gregory would join them soon enough. Now this chase pack would contain some heavy hitters for the bike like Matt Burton and Mike Phillips, and it wasn't going to be long before they would catch that front group. Joe Skipper would have hoped he might have made that group. It would have really suited him. However, he finished a couple minutes back on the swim with the lead pro women, but still a better swim overall for him than he had in Ironman Texas, and it still put him in contention for this race. So Braden Curry, Gregory Barnaby joined Horsford Turner and Josh Amberger at the front of the bike, and they were moving pretty well, but not well enough to hold off the chase group motoring behind. Matt Burton was one of those leading the way on the bike, and he was pulling all of these guys to the front of the race probably quicker than they could have imagined. Joe Skipper was also moving really well behind. He wasn't making too much inroads in the first half of the bike to the very front of the race. He was eventually joined by Nick Thompson because Nick and Tim Van Berkel had picked up a 5-minute drafting penalty, and then going around the U-turn to make matters worse for Nick Thompson, who was one of the dark horses for this race, he slipped out and crashed. Thankfully, he was okay and was able to get back up on his bike, but he lost touch with Joe Skipper, who actually amazingly rode all the way into that chase pack by the time he got into T2, and he was off the bike in 3rd place. But Matt Burton was really the star of this bike. He put the hammer down at about 120 Ks in, and nobody was able to go with him. He absolutely flew into T2 and managed to pick up almost 5.5-minute lead. Clearly, he knew what cards he had to play, knowing that that chase group had a lot of strong runners. So he had this great advantage, but would it be enough? And Braden Curry, in his post-race interview with me, said he actually wasn't too worried at that point, and he was looking like the favorite to do so right away, the quickest out of that whole chase pack. Joe had a little bit of a slow start. Josh Amberger was looking good right away. Mike Phillips looks like he was settling in for a well-paced run. And then Gregory Barnaby, he looked like he was struggling a little bit as well. But it would be back and forth so many times with all of these athletes in this chase group, apart from Braden Curry, who had separated himself and was gaining on Matt Burton. There were so many changes, like I said, that it would be impossible for me to go through them all. But between Braden Curry and Matt Burton, that was where the biggest battle was going on, because Braden was catching him enough that it looked like he would be able to get him by the finish line. However, Matt was clearly pacing this run well, taking his time through aid stations, and sure enough, all of a sudden that gap went back out 10 seconds, and we began to think that Matt had just pulled off the race of his career. Sure enough, it would be like that to the end of the race, and Matt would pull off the most unbelievable result of the Ironman Pro Series so far. And I say that because not many of you might know that Matt almost lost half of his foot due to a bone infection earlier this year.
We had a bone infection in my right small toe, and I had 2 surgeries, and then we went to go back in for a third one, but they said, well, we'll probably have to take half the foot off. And I don't know, we don't know on the return. So it's up to you if you want to try a big round of antibiotics and hope it works. And fortunate for me, it did.
Which meant that he wasn't able to train throughout January and February, and he was only able to do about 10 weeks of solid training leading up into this race. That's why it is just so remarkable, and why he was really emotional running down this finish chute. The crowd was absolutely electric for him, the Australian athlete who smashed the course record by 5 minutes, beating Braden Curry in the end by 2.5 minutes, who had a great race himself, and who was happy to see Matt take the victory, pick up his Pro Series points and his World Championship slot. Now, the headlines weren't over for this race because it was still a tight battle behind, and Mike Phillips pulled off a 2:42 marathon to pick up 3rd place and his Kona slot. And then Arnaud Guillot of France and Tristan Allage picked up the surprising 4th and 5th place here to take their Kona slots ahead of Joe Skipper, who finished back in 6th place, 11.5 minutes down. He will be a little bit disappointed with that, but overall still a good race for Joe, who picks up some Pro Series points to get his campaign underway. But the main headline has to stay with the remarkable comeback of Matt Burton, who almost lost his career and now ends up with the biggest win ever. And it doesn't sound like he'll be chasing the Pro Series, but will be all in on that Kona race.
Yeah, I think there's some great talent in the world, but I'm willing to go with them. I'm willing to try and ride.
But moving on to the women, and they also had a fantastic. We knew from the start the swim pace was going to be on, because Lauren Brandon, Lottie Willems, and Rebecca Clark were here, 3 of the best swimmers in the sport. And sure enough, they got a pretty sizable gap. They were hoping to get a good gap on Hannah Berry, who said her swim was in a good place leading up into this race, and she was one of the favorites to win. And they got over 2.5 minutes on her, so they would have been happy with that, coming out of the water with Joe Skipper and hopping onto their bike. Now, Kylie Simpson was the defending champion here and always possesses a really strong bike and run on this course, but she was 17.5 minutes back coming out of the water, which just seemed insurmountable even to make the podium. Now, those 3 women, Lauren Brandon, Lottie Willems, and Rebecca Clark, were working really well together at the front of the race, managing to keep their gap for the most part to Hannah Berry, who only gained a little bit on them. Lottie Willems did say she was struggling with something rubbing with her front wheel, so she felt like she was losing a little bit of watts there, but Lauren Brandon was having a lifetime best power and was holding on to her just fine. In fact, she managed to make it all the way with Lottie into transition. Rebecca Clark just fell off of them and came into transition in 3rd place. Kylie Simpson made up a lot of time on the bike, but it still looked like it would be too much for her to catch what would likely be Lottie Willems, Lauren Brandon, and Hannah Berry on the podium. Now, Hannah did gain some time by the end of the bike and looked good starting the run, but you just never know in an Ironman whether people did too much on the bike, and it was still up for grabs. Lauren was running so well and managed to stay with Lottie for quite a while, but eventually she started to fade and Lottie managed to get a little bit of a gap. However, before long, Hannah Berry had made up the ground, and when she overtook Lottie, it looked like it was a foregone conclusion that she was going to be the Ironman Cairns champion and pick up those 5,000 Pro Series points. But behind Kylie Simpson, who'd gotten off the bike 15 minutes down, had run a 2:51 marathon here before, and it was possible that she could find her way on the podium, but Lauren Brandon was running well, and it was going to be a nail biter to see if she could get her in the very end of the run, which is eventually what happened. Kylie managed to take that 3rd spot from Lauren, and Lotte held on for 2nd, while Hannah Berry picked up a impressive win, and she returns to top form following a run injury last year. It's clearly starting to click again for her with another good result. After her good result at Ironman Texas, she moves much higher up in the Pro Series standings, and it looks like she is going to be one of the top competitors to win this full series. Another fantastic race in one of the most beautiful destinations I have ever been to for an Ironman race. The crowds were just unbelievable, and I'm gonna leave you with the sights and sounds of Matt and Hannah winning the race and what it was like to be there. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to learn more, head to dailytri.com. It's got all the latest information about pro racing. We'll see you in the next one.